Hey, everybody, this is Lisa, and I'm super excited today to welcome my guest, Leigh Nguyen from Little by Little Homeschool. And Leigh, I am so glad that you're here today. We just connected in the last couple of weeks, but we could talk for hours, I think.
I agree. I absolutely agree. You get like two homeschool moms together, whether in a room or just over Zoom, and we could just chat for hours.
Exactly. So I am so glad you're here. You have a really fun mission and vision for what you're doing with Little by Little Homeschool. Just share a little bit about what you're doing in the homeschool community.
Yeah, so I started homeschooling, I forget the numbers, 12, 13 years ago, pulled my kids out of school. You kind of, it gets a little, the waters get a little muddied
Yeah.
right there. And I felt so alone. So when I started homeschooling, I had one homeschool mom friend, and she was a great support. And I wish I had more. But back then, we didn't have the internet and all this stuff. I mean, maybe it was, but I didn't know how to work it. I still had dial up, probably internet. And I want to be like the mom next door for other moms. I want to be just that person that they know that they can be like, look, I had a really hard day, and be willing and will know that I will take that and listen. And so I want to be an encouragement to homeschool moms if they're thinking about homeschooling, if they're just kind of getting into it, or if they're in it and you're in the trenches sometimes and you just feel like you're a little bit drowning, or you feel like you're the only one that's experiencing something. So I want to come alongside and encourage them to keep at it and do it long term because it's completely worth it.
I love it. You mentioned that you really want to be relatable, and that's one thing that I love about you. You are so relatable. You're such a great conversationalist, and you know a lot of things, but it's just so easy and fun to talk to you.
Oh,
So
thank you.
you're
You
doing it.
too. You're the same
Oh,
way.
thanks. Thanks. You said your focus was to inspire moms, and we talked a little bit about developing a vision or your why. And I think as we're at the end of a school year and starting people are curriculum shopping, people are going to the conventions, and people are making their list and then going seeing a new shiny object and going, wow, I need to buy that third math program. Let's talk about the basics. Why are you homeschooling? How to keep clear about what you're doing and your purpose. Can you speak a little bit to that?
Yes, I think this is something that is very easily glossed over. And I did too when I first started out. And we just jump straight into the curriculum, right? Because that's the fun stuff. And that's what we think we have to get the curriculum before we can do anything with homeschooling. You have to do the curriculum. But what if we took a step back before even choosing that curriculum or looking at curriculum and figure out, like, get that foundation? Why are we homeschooling? It sounds so silly, but write it down, write it in a notebook, talk to your husband, talk to your kids, maybe if they're, especially if they're older, but really write down why you're homeschooling, and that why, if you're just starting out, whether you have young kids or you have kids you're pulling out of school, it might change that why. And sometimes the why is something because you want something for your family, and sometimes it's because you don't want something for your family. You're
Right.
avoiding something. And it can be a combination of those, and neither is right or wrong. I say the only wrong when it comes to your why, your vision, your goals, it's only wrong if you aren't being true to yourself and to your family. If you're trying to impress somebody else, but if you have your why, write it down and revisit that
Yeah.
on the days that it's hard, because you're going to say, this is why I'm doing that. And
Yeah.
then beyond that is the vision, having a vision for your homeschool. If you don't know where you're going, how are you going to know if you get there or if you're on track to getting to that destination? If
Yeah.
you don't have a vision worked out. And I talk about that a lot with the moms. And I'm like, I know you want to jump to the curriculum, but sit down, write down your why, think about it, pray on it for a while, and then it's okay. There's no right or wrong. And
Yeah.
then your vision statement, just what is it you're looking for? And it doesn't have to be anything huge. It doesn't have to be, I suggest that you can write it out in two main ways that are easiest to do. You can either write bullet point form, just
Mm.
writing down like, this is what we're seeking to do, or you can write it in a sentence. And it depends upon the family and maybe your writing style or how you like to write. If you don't like to write, it's okay. You don't have to write a whole big dissertation on it. Just write
Yeah.
a couple of bullet points. What is your vision for your family through
Yeah.
these homeschool years?
Right. You touched on a couple points. It could be about what you want, or it could be about what you don't want. And I think it's helpful to maybe decide, are you reacting to something or are you proactively going towards something? Both are totally valid, and I'm not saying to dismiss them, but I think they're coming at why you're homeschooling from different places. And on those hard days, being reactive can be harder to stay the course if you have a long-term vision. So if you're pulling your kids out of a situation that you don't want them to be into, maybe come up with a proactive, this is where we're going, which you did mention. Like, what is your vision statement? What do you want at the end? What do you want your kids to know and learn and do? That's really good stuff.
Yeah, no, and that reactive, well, maybe you don't like what's going on in school overall or what's going on with your child. That can be the start, but again, if you stay there, you're gonna be staying in a negative space
Yeah,
and just thinking about what you are trying to avoid instead of what you actually can get with the
yeah,
homeschooling. And you're absolutely right. You hit the nail on the head. It's easy to then start to, I think like, well, it wasn't so bad. He
yeah,
wasn't being bullied that bad.
yeah,
When the days get hard, we can put him back in.
yeah,
As opposed to being like, okay, he was bullied, this situation, whatever it is, kept going on, and so we made this change. So now what's the positive we can get? What can we look
yeah,
forward to? What is gonna be the fruit of this time instead of
yeah.
focusing on the negative? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. One thing I think we both can agree on, homeschooling is actually a job. And I think sometimes when we're pulling our kids out of school or we're just starting, like we're going to homeschool, we think it's going to be like the Hobby Lobby homeschool where everything's neat and in place. And you've got that farmhouse kitchen look where everything is like coordinated. I live kind of on a little acreage mini farm and it's dirty, let me tell you. But homeschooling is a job. I mean, it's such a great adventure, but I think we need to keep that in mind that it really is a job that requires work and effort and mess and times to clean up and stuff like that. So vision can really keep us focused in the midst of some of that messy work of living with people because our kids are certainly people and homeschooling them is a job.
I completely agree on that, and that sometimes is a mindset shift that moms have to do, especially if we were planning on putting our kids in school or if they were in school and we had that time to do things and we're like, "Oh, wait a minute," or whether we worked inside from home or outside the home, or there's this shift, and whether you're still working outside the home or inside the home or you're home full time with your kids, it has to be. I actually just did a podcast episode just about this. It has to be a priority
Yeah.
and to get the full effect
Yeah.
out of it and to have, no regrets at the end then too.
Yeah, I love that. How do you make it a full priority if you're working and have a bunch of kids? I think so many homeschoolers are finding themselves in that space right now, and wow, it can be overwhelming, right? How do you I love your title, Little by Little, and I'm assuming that comes from One Travels Far, possibly. But tell us about how to do the little by little as you've got all this stuff going on. How does that even happen?
Yeah, so the little by little came about. It actually came about. I had a blog, a home decor blog from years ago, and
Oh,
just kind of because we were just doing it on a budget and everything. I was like, well, everything is little by little. And when I was looking at shifting to homeschool, I was like, what do I call it? And I was like, well, of course, little by little, because it really is. You're not going to achieve everything in 1 year, and you don't see what you have done all the time until the end.
yeah,
And there's years, I remember years being in there and being like, I don't know if I can do this, crying, having, meltdowns. And then my husband and I being like, what can we do? How can we make this work? Because we have this vision. We know what we want long term. And I can tell you after graduating 2 kids, and I'm on my third kiddo who's 10th grade right now, it is 100% worth it. I don't regret any of the sacrifice. I don't regret any of the time of making it a priority. And there was a lot of times we had to put things aside for our family. We decided to continue to live off of one income, and we've moved multiple times to add more margin to our finances, to add more margin to our time. We even moved states at one point because it was just a new opportunity for my husband, which actually homeschooling made it much easier to move states because we didn't have to worry about that whole going and starting a new school.
yeah,
The kids, I mean, yeah, they left friends, but yeah, it's just making it a priority is completely worth it. And it happens though little by little. It happens as we continue to do it. And it's just really looking at what is in every single year. Every single homeschool year is different,
yeah,
Every single homeschool year is different. The kids change and mature. We change and mature. There's different priorities. There's things that maybe come up in the family and things that have to take precedent over maybe whatever else is going on. And as kids get older, it ramps up and you have the high school years and like,
yeah.
what do you want to do after this? And just things become more intense. But it really is just the day in and day out that we don't think we're making a difference. And then all of a sudden we look back, we realize all those day in and day outs led up to so many years and we did make a difference.
Yeah. What do you see as the main benefit of having homeschooled your kids? You've touched on this a couple of times already.
relationships with, myself and them, my husband with them, and well, their father, my husband, their father, and then them together, them as kids, their friendships are so much stronger than I know that mine were with my brothers. Now, maybe it's because I was the girl and they were the boys and I was sensitive and they were always picking on me, and could have been some of those dynamics, but we didn't spend a
Yeah,
lot of time together,
right.
and
Yeah,
just the spending the time together. And it was never lost on me when there was multiple times I would look over and maybe they're working on their math work and one of them is sitting there and they're kind of rubbing their head and they're having a hard time. And I see the other one just kind of reach over and pat them on the back and say, "You're
oh,
doing good." Like I was just like, wow, like they get to
yeah,
be they know each other so
yeah,
well. They get to be each other's cheerleader, and doesn't mean that everything was perfect.
yeah,
There's always going to be things, but just coming back to that relationship and
yeah,
having those relationships with my 21 and 19-year-old, I I mean, it's so good because we know each other so well, for better
yeah.
or for worse.
Yeah, that's so sweet. My my two younger kids are 3 years apart, and they get asked all the time if they're twins. And they don't look anything alike. My daughter's 5'6", my son is 6'2". I mean, they're 3 years apart, but they have the same goofy sense of humor and the same intensity. And so it's just really fun that, all those years together, they get each other's little quirky jokes and stuff like that. And it is really sweet. It is really a beautiful thing. Did you feel like did you really feel great about the academics in your homeschool? Do you feel like that was a benefit too? I think I hear that from dads all the time. Is my kid going to be academically prepared if we homeschool? We can't teach everything ourselves. What do you say to that?
Yeah, let's start with the dad part. I feel like I get a lot of the hesitation, from dads. I'll hear from moms, well, they're worried about this. They're not going to know how to deal with difficult people. I'm like, well, they're with siblings or something. They're going to go to a co-op. They're going to go to youth group. They're going to deal with difficult people.
Yeah,
But when I started homeschooling, that was 100% my focus, was the academics, because that's all I knew. And I
yeah,
just recreated school at home because that's all that I knew. I didn't know about all these homeschool styles and all the possibilities. I just
yeah,
got the textbooks, we sat down and we did it. There were tiers, and over time I began to realize relationship over the curriculum. And so my husband, I mean, he wasn't as concerned necessarily about that. He wanted to make sure, he's like, I want to make sure that they can graduate and that they can either get a job or go on to school or create their own jobs, whatever it is that they are
yeah,
prepared. And as time's gone by, we've just kind of realized that a lot of academics are great. And I think that they can teach a lot of character, especially when it comes to math
yeah,
and different things that they have to push through and to do. But it's not the end all be all, because there's so much we can learn. And I
yeah.
think it's really important for us as parents to continue to learn, and we model that to our kids, because we can't learn everything. There's going to be
Right.
gaps. I say
Yeah.
there's going to be gaps. There's gaps in my education.
Yes.
There's gaps in everybody's education.
Yeah.
And I like that when they get older, we really focus in and hone in on the areas that they're really interested in. We don't ignore. It's not that if they're not interested in English and reading and writing that we completely ignore that, but make sure they have what
Yeah.
they need. But it's just really teaching them a lot of how to relate in the world,
Yeah.
how to be in the world and stuff, and know how to go into things. So preparing my 16-year-old for a job interview, and I was like, what do you do when you go in? And he's like, I go in, I shake the hand, look in the eyes, nice to meet you. I'm like,
Yes.
that's what you do. Like that
Yeah.
right there has made, and you're not faking it. It's
Right.
because that's what we've taught him to do
Yeah.
all the time, because he's
Right.
with us for all the things.
Yeah, yeah, I love it. That is great soft skills. I talk about those all the time. Great soft skills. Tell us how you focused on your kids' interests as they got older. This is also a question I get all the time. Not so much a question, but more of a statement like high school's really serious, because I speak about high school all the time. High school's so serious, we got to really buckle down and the fun is over. And I'm like, this is where the fun really begins. Tell us about how you really focused on your kids' interests as they got older.
So when I start high school years with them, I'm a little bit strict, we'll say, because we live in a state that's a bit more strict, and I want to meet their guidelines so that we can receive, we don't get a diploma, we get a letter of equivalency, a letter of completion. And so I want to meet all of those guidelines. So in ninth and 10th grade, I kind of hammer it a little bit hard. Doesn't mean we don't do things with their interests. I'm like, look, if we just can get a lot of this done,
Yeah,
we have the next 2 years. My older son, I graduated him a year early because he was just done,
yeah.
and we worked hard to get that all done in 3 years, and then he went off and he's running his own business and stuff. So, but just really letting them, focusing those 2 years, and then deciding on some interest, exposing them to different areas, getting them to connect with other people that maybe
Yeah,
do whatever it is they want to get into, because maybe they'll connect with somebody and they'll say, oh no, I don't want to do that. They
Yeah,
thought maybe they want to get into nursing, and they actually sit down and talk with a nurse before even going in somewhere. And they're like, oh no, she told me about all that's involved and I don't
yeah,
think I can do that. Doesn't mean they don't change their mind as they mature and they're like, okay, maybe I can handle all the blood and stuff and move on. But exposing them to what the possibilities are and not holding them back, and having the time that
hmm,
we have the freedom to set our schedule and to
yeah,
figure out what we want to do. And so it does not mean that if they have an interest in ninth, 10th grade, that that's what they're going to end up doing. It might be a leap to the
yeah,
next thing. I remember spending a lot of time with my daughter, probably maybe would have been her 12th grade year. She was really into holistic health. And so we
mhm,
did a ton of stuff. And she didn't end up going on to do anything with that, but she knows all of the stuff now.
yeah,
She still knows it and still is interested in it as well. She went on to do something else, but still it was a good practice. I see her maybe doing that something with
yeah,
that later on in her life. But it's been fun as a parent because I've gotten to learn so many things that I didn't know. And
yeah,
I also don't have to know everything. If you want to get
right,
into my 16-year-old's into drones, I'm like, I don't need to, how can I get you the resources, get you this
yeah,
course he's taking right now, and you go ahead and learn it and then tell me
yeah,
about it.
yeah,
And just giving them, opening up the world, I guess, as opposed to just it being super closed. What is it
yeah,
you possibly, and then being excited and providing opportunities, driving them to the places and
yeah.
introducing them to the people and
I
that
love
kind of
it so
stuff.
much. You are singing my song. I love what you said about your daughter really into holistic health, and she's not doing that. So much of what we learned in high school, we're learning transferable skills, and we don't need to be so vocationally driven. Like if we invest in an interest our kids have, that if they don't do it vocationally, we failed. I mean, I look back on my own high school years, and I was on sport, I was swimming, and I was doing tennis and squash, and I was throwing pottery and photography, and I had a job, and I was in choir and music. Like school was really like in the way of all the things I did, but I don't do any of those things anymore. Do you know what I mean? But I learned so much from doing those things. And I think we need to like shift the focus from being so vocationally driven or college is the end goal to our kids are building transferable skills, including how to learn on their own. Like just what you were talking about with your son and the drones. I mean, that is like, wow, that is like cutting edge right now. Honestly, I had a student who 3D printed drone parts and created his own drone, which is crazy to think about. I never in a million years would have even considered that would be a possibility. But these kids are exposed to so many cool things. And if we resource them and get out of the way, wow, the sky's the limit for them. I am really intrigued by your son who's working his own business right now. He's a pretty young entrepreneur. And one of the things I've been telling everybody is your kids need entrepreneurship in high school because that is a really great viable option for our young adults. So do you mind sharing a little bit about how he got on that path? I think that might be really interesting to people.
Let me start by saying that entrepreneurship is not something that was modeled to me growing up. It wasn't something that I even thought about. Looking back now, my personality, I was like, wow, I'm like, that would have been really great to do. It would have been up my alley, but I didn't know anything to back when I was growing up. And when you were growing up, entrepreneurship was having your own brick and mortar store.
Yes.
What are you going to make and what are you going to sell? But the
Yeah.
internet has opened up the possibilities for so
Yeah.
many different things.
Right.
And so he kind of came to us. So he's 19 now. He might have been about 12, 13, and he wanted to start splitting firewood. We had taken out a tree that wasn't good for using in our wood stove, but it's fine for campfire wood.
Yeah.
So we're like, okay, sure. He's out there splitting it by hand, and he made a little stand. We lived out in the country then and started selling it. And then we moved to the suburbs. I guess maybe he probably just turned 13 then. All the ages, the dates and stuff kind of
Yeah.
mushed
Yeah.
together. Yeah. So he decided he wanted to start mowing lawns. And I was like, okay. Well, he didn't have access to any social media. So I kind of went on, I found like the Nextdoor app, put some stuff out, found some odd jobs for him for that. And I think he made some flyers and put it around in a couple of blocks near us and stuff. And he'd throw his lawnmower into the back of my minivan. I'd drive him and then come back in 45 minutes, pick him up. And then eventually I was like, you have too many jobs. Like they're scattered throughout. And he'd just be pushing his lawnmower down the road and going to the next one. And him and my husband went in together on one. And so it's just that idea of what he could do kind of grew. Now he did get a job, worked at a grocery store for a couple of years and saved every single penny that he earned and used that invested into the business. And so here he is, at 19 and he's, running a full business and has employees. I don't even know how many employees he has. I think he'll probably work up to about 10 or so this by this summer. So yeah, so he's just learning. He wants to learn. And like you're saying, just teaching them, giving that love of learning
Yeah,
and knowing that those skills of how to learn, and that the fact that you're not going to know everything. I feel like we
yeah,
felt like in school we had to know everything, and that was all
yes.
there was to know. I wasn't
And
very good at.
it wasn't okay not to know. If you didn't know, you were kind of in the dumb group. I
Yeah,
don't know
yeah,
how we would know everything, but there just felt like there was that pressure constantly growing up. I felt
yeah.
that at least.
I did too. The memorization. I'm terrible at
Yeah.
memorizing things, but put things together or have me, connect the dots and stuff, and that makes a lot more sense. So yeah, so he's just kind of jumped in 2 feet and had read tons of books. So by the end of his high school time was pretty much he was just doing reading entrepreneur books, reading books by business leaders
Yeah.
and podcasts and consuming courses and that kind of stuff, and
Love
just
it.
scaling his business.
I love it. And I think it's a great thing to think about. Like he's starting a lawn mowing business. He started with a push mower in the back of your minivan. You don't have to start with a lot of equipment and tools to really make a difference in the world. And listen, as somebody who I just mentioned, like I'm having somebody come and clean my house occasionally, and what a difference it makes in my life because we all have different seasons in life where we need services that we might not be able to do ourselves or have the time to do. And it's a blessing to be able to find somebody that you trust that does a good job. So don't overlook those kind of opportunities for your kids. And I'm sure he's doing a lot of giving that nobody even knows about, where he might just go into, an elderly person's lawn and mow it for free or whatever. I'm assuming he's that kind of kid because I've talked to you. But it's such a great opportunity when you have those resources to bless others too. So I love that. And I've known a couple kids, honestly, who've made six-figure businesses with doing lawn services. Wow, that's pretty
Yeah.
exciting. Um, there's a
Yeah.
lot of opportunities for our kids.
There are, and like you said, just you can start off scrappy. It doesn't have to
Yeah.
be this huge thing, and I think
Yeah, I
there's
love that.
definitely a market for whatever it is that people hired him specifically because he was a teen and they wanted to support what he was doing. They're like, "I'd rather give you the 15, $20 than somebody else." And I was like, "Well, capitalize upon this right here.
Yes.
That's your shtick," I said, is
Yeah,
that you're a teen. And so as he scaled, some of them weren't too excited, but he's like, "I can't continue to be the 14-year-old with the push mower."
yeah, yeah,
I'm looking to eventually move on with my life and be able to support a family and that kind of stuff. So, but yeah, if you're just starting off, it doesn't have to be anything
yeah,
huge, and
yeah,
people want to support kids. I see that
yeah.
so often, and
Yeah,
they will, and they'll come alongside and they'll be like, sure, they'll buy some little, even if it's some little trinket that's
yeah,
not worth much, they'll be like, here's $20 for it. I love
yeah,
to do that kind of stuff, buy stuff from kids
same.
just to bless them and encourage them.
Yeah, I love that idea of start off scrappy. I mean, I feel like that's how I started my business. I don't know why I thought I could do it, but I just did it. And yeah, it was, when you start things, it's rough. You don't know everything, and you never do know everything. You have to constantly be reading and going after it. How did your son get interested in drones? Okay, so like I said, I could just talk to you for a long time because I think drones, that's that tech thing that I say this story on myself all the time. I accidentally turned on the flashlight on my phone and I didn't know I had a flashlight. And I literally had to call my son and ask him how to turn off the flashlight because I'm not very techy. And I think our kids, they've grown up with tech and tech resources. And so they just aren't intimidated by it. They're like, I'm going to push the buttons till I figure out how to make it happen. So tell me how your son got into drones. That's not anything that's in your world, right?
No, I probably know how to do the flashlight, but probably maybe a step up from you, but I haven't a lot of things I figured out. And now, so I should preface this and say my kids didn't necessarily start off with a lot of tech. We were pretty um conservative, I would say, with phones and with social media. He still doesn't have social media,
Yeah.
and with access to things. And because I really just wanted to give them a childhood that they could
Yeah.
think back to that wasn't consumed. But when they have an interest in it, like you said, you could give a child a cell phone, a brand new cell phone, and they'll figure it out. I mean, my kids,
Yes.
we have lock screens on all ours, and they figured out everything they could do on a lock screen. They could figure out that sometimes you're playing music because if you left your like Pandora or something's on, like it open. I don't know. They've taught me things about my phone I didn't know. But the drone thing just I don't even remember. So he's 16 now. It would have been a couple of years ago. Maybe he got like some little cheap one from Walmart or something and for Christmas, maybe he
Yeah.
mentioned it, or I think we had some older homeschool friends, some
Yeah.
boys that had some drones. And so he's a little kind of interested in it. And he actually started working for his older brother. So he started making some money and saving money and purchasing actual real drones and learning more about them. And it's just been a trial and error. So start off with just some cheaper versions and has gotten more. And let's just say that the drones sometimes have a life of their own. We've had trees to climb. We've had them run over by cars.
Wow.
There's been all kinds of things. Droning is, I don't want to say it's dangerous for the person, it's dangerous for the drone. We've had them stolen. There's been a lot of ups and downs and a lot of things I've been able to walk him through. So I don't know anything. My eye hand coordination isn't good. And so I think kids, especially kids, he's always had fine motor skills and
Yes.
really good eye hand coordination. And I think that doesn't mean anybody can't pick up droning. But if you find that your child really has fine motor skills, is interested in building and fixing, because there's been times where it has broken propellers, he's changed things, and
Mhm.
so he just kind of has gone it just for fun, and he'll just kind of fly and do some fun stuff. So right now he's working on getting his drone pilot license because he wants to move on to some type of entrepreneurship stuff and do it commercially. And so in order to do that, there's regulations and you have to
Yeah.
actually have a license in order to do so. But for him, just right now and just his kind of fun stuff flying around the neighborhood or bringing it to my parents out in the
Yeah.
country and flying around is perfectly
Very
fine.
cool. And listen, there is a good business to be had there because photographers use drones. So wedding photographers, farmers, we live in farm country. Every farmer I know has a drone. They check their crops with it. So if you have a kid who has a drone license, they can get a little business going. A lot of people are using drones you're not even thinking about right now. It's a great thing to really consider for your kids, especially if they're kind of techie and that kind of thing. I know we've kind of gone a little bit long, but it's been so fun to talk to you. What is a great book you would recommend for anybody considering homeschooling?
Oh, there's quite a few. Where do I even start? Can I mention some, maybe some authors? I remember reading,
Yeah,
I would say probably Janie Erickson, her
love
Homeschool
Jamie.
Bravely. I had
Yes.
found her before her book even came out. She was probably the first blog that maybe I found. I forget the name of her blog, but she was probably the first blog that I
Yeah.
found when I started looking for blogs and looking for homeschool information, probably on Pinterest. Pinterest was probably the first place that I ever
Oh,
went to because I went to Pinterest for everything and
yeah.
probably typed in homeschool for that. I In the past year, I've read a bunch more that I've really enjoyed and I wish that I had
Yeah.
way back when my kids were younger. Modern Miss Mason,
Oh,
her book, Leah Bowden,
yeah.
that's a really good one. I also really enjoyed Wild and Free, Ainsley Arment's Wild and Free. Oh, let me see. Well, maybe not particularly homeschool, but John Taylor Gatto,
Love
some of
him.
his books,
Yeah.
especially, I would say, especially maybe start with Dumbing Us Down. It's a short book packed full.
Yes.
I remember reading it, it felt like a gut punch.
Yes. It really puts things in perspective. Yeah.
It does. It does. I mean, some of his other books are a bit longer, but I would say Dumbing Us Down was a good pivotal one. Dorinda Wilson, she's written a couple of
Yes.
books. Those have been really, really good, encouraging because I feel like yes, she's right there with me. And before even homeschool stuff, I mean, it would be Sally Clarkson,
Oh, I love Sally
who does
Clarkson.
talk about homeschool stuff, but also just motherhood in general. I remember reading a lot
Yes.
of books about motherhood, and I liked how her books intersected between motherhood and
Yeah.
homeschool, and those were a huge, huge.
Yeah.
I think I've read multiple of her books multiple times.
I saw her speak in Glorietta like decades ago at this point, but she is and I think that's one thing, like, this is a great place to wrap up. Like, homeschooling is parenting, parenting is homeschooling. And it's not that you're not a parent if you outsource to public or private school. It's just that it becomes more intimate and day to day. You have so much more time with your kids to really get to know them, they get to know you. And for good and for, like everybody knows each other. We know our strengths, we know our weaknesses, we know how to provoke each other, but we also know how to encourage and really love each other well. And that's one of the beautiful things about homeschooling. It's such a really lovely way of raising your family. Yeah, and you exemplify that so very well.
Oh,
Where can
thank you.
people find you?
Yes. So I also have a podcast. You're listening to this on a podcast. You can head over to Little by Little Homeschool podcast, and everything else is housed over at littlebylittlehomeschool.com. And you can link to social media there and everything. Probably go to the website. You can get to everything.
Okay, we'll put the links in the show notes and on the website so you guys can find them. Leigh, it's been delightful to talk to you again. Thanks for joining me. And you guys, I will put the links so that you can go find Leigh and all of the resources that she offers. Great reading list, by the way. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. I could go on and on and on. Where's my bookshelf?
Yeah, I know. I'm with you. I'm a book reader. Okay, you guys, thank you so much for joining us. We will catch you soon. This is Lisa.